Australia is the most mysterious country in the world. The number of secrets that this continent holds is countless, and the local deserts simply have no logical explanation, as well as these species of animals. Here, the main part of the continent is behind a fence, and people live only along the coast. Maybe it is true that there is another land beyond Australia that we don't even know about? Let's figure it out. Lands of Australia, or more correctly, Terra Australis Incognita. Unknown southern land, because that is how this continent was called in the last century. It is no coincidence that these lands are considered unexplored in history, because Australia is constantly either flooded or burning, or is in a short respite between these states. But let's start from the very beginning. If you believe Wikipedia, the first visit to Australia took place in 1522, not so long ago, and they were the Portuguese, Cristóvão de Mendonça. But I think you shouldn't trust these sources because the same Wikipedia says, the first documented landing of a European on the shores of Australia occurred in 1606, and they were the Dutch. I want to ask myself, are the Portuguese not Europeans? By the way, the difference between the official discoveries is quite a bit, almost a whole century. And later, on the territory of Australia, artifacts from the 15th, 16th centuries were found much earlier than the official discovery of the lands. That is, with dating, everything is not so simple. Who and when discovered Australia actually remains a mystery. The lands of Australia are not at all similar to those known to us. They are not America or Africa, although they are located at the same latitudes. All life in Australia is concentrated precisely along the coast, in a strictly defined place. But who drew this line? For a tourist, Australia may seem like a very green continent, but this is not so. Most of the territory is deserts, plateaus, and mountainous terrain, which also have a very unusual appearance, and they are found only in Australia. See for yourself. Visiting the no-man's land of the deserts of Australia is almost like getting into a science fiction novel about the colonization of another planet, only for real. Just imagine, there are quite a lot of abandoned cars in the deserts of Australia. Sometimes you can even find retro cars. Apparently, they think so here. It is easier to buy a new one than to tow and repair the old one, because getting the car to the nearest city is already a problem. But sometimes they find cars that are still running. Here in some places there are Jeeps from about 1937. They are easy to repair on the spot and get to the city with this find. Say local residents, Australia itself is a rather arid region. About 44% of its territory is occupied by deserts. And the continent itself does not have a single sea. There are not even large stable lakes and rivers. The central and western Australia areas are especially deserted. True, there is one exception here. Here in the endless Australian deserts is one of the largest lakes in the world, Lake Eyre. The lake is large but unstable. Yes, and it does not fill up often, but in those rare seasons when the desert is covered by rain, the lake's surface stretches for kilometers, delighting plants and animals with fresh water, which in the desert is really worth its weight in gold. The rivers and lakes themselves are filled with water episodically during rare rains. But even despite the fact that the entire territory is deserted, plants bloom here that are not found in our latitudes. They are not found anywhere else at all, because Australia is full of species of unique animals and plants. They are like settlers, or just another world. Have you ever seen anything like this? Australia is an ancient continent. There is no doubt about it. Many ancient species of flora and fauna have been preserved here. Some of them, for example, the Wollemi pine, a marvelous plant and even looks artificial. It has been growing here since the Jurassic period and apparently has even outlived the dinosaurs. The discovery of this tree was as surprising to botanists as if they had stumbled upon a living dinosaur today. This plant is still one of the most ancient plants on Earth. It was once considered extinct, but the discovery in Australia has turned everything upside down again. But there were once giant trees here that until recently covered huge territories. Eucalyptus trees more than 60 meters high, just like the giant sequoias in America, which grew quietly and then suddenly began to be cut down en masse. In Australia, these giant forests were destroyed in a different way, by fires, which were recently shown to us on the news. This fire erased everything, changing the area beyond recognition. Coincidence? Probably not at all. After all, these animals, or rather their nature, raise too many questions for biologists and historians, and why do we need any unnecessary questions? And there really are a lot of questions. What is the fence of Australia worth, which divides the continent into two parts? For example, here is a map of the roads of Australia. It is from it that you can best understand where people live and where the passage is closed to mere mortals. I have already made a whole video about the Australian fence. You can watch it on the tip. Well, a lot of new information has accumulated during this time, for example, about what researchers managed to photograph behind this very fence. After all, time goes by and more inconvenient shots begin to pop up on the internet. Australia has been repeatedly tried to be thoroughly studied. For example, the British explorer Alfred Isaac Middleton, at the end of the 19th century, traveled to the farthest corners of the world in search of zoological, botanical, and archaeological wonders, and once wandered into Australia. There is not much information about this, but what is available really turns known historical facts upside down. After all, there are a lot of photographs that capture very strange and even anomalous objects, inexplicable structures, representatives of unknown tribes and outlandish space animals. The landscapes in the picture seem so fantastic that all attempts by official science to establish the location of the shooting have been unsuccessful. But according to Middleton's diaries, the British traveler took these unique pictures during a secret expedition to Australia, having managed to cross the legendary ice wall of the Australian continent. However, there are still more questions than answers. Remember, at the very beginning, I said that all life in Australia is concentrated near the coast. This is true. If you look at the map of Australia, you can see that almost half of its territory is occupied by deserts and semi-deserts. Just huge, lifeless territories, devoid of water and vegetation. You will not see this on any other continent, only Australia. This can be partly explained by climatic features, but not everything is as simple as it may seem, and we will try to figure this out. In the center of the continent, today there are only solid deserts. But was it always like this? Many people know that the deserts of Africa were once green. This is evidenced by old maps of Africa, where we can see the once green Sahara. But what about Australia? The situation here is actually similar. Australia and the Sahara have much more in common than it might seem, because both deserts were created artificially. It would be more correct to say that it couldn't have happened without humans. Apparently, the climate in both the Sahara and Australia changed very quickly, which could not have happened for natural reasons. Many ancient animals lived here, including representatives of extinct megafauna. And the existence of large predators is impossible without an abundant food supply. And herbivores, as you know, live in large numbers where there are enough plant resources. And rabbits and kangaroos, which Australia is full of, they are the most real herbivores. It turns out that the deserts in Australia appeared not so long ago, and many wonderful animals and plants are proof of this. All this life could not have simply originated in the desert. And those species that paleontologists study today from preserved remains were adapted to life in a more humid climate with an abundance of grassy and forest vegetation. It turns out that these deserts are either man-made or, on the contrary, a consequence of some experiment or disaster. Something like modern ones, because even now there is such a thing, for example, in America in the state of Nevada, where from nuclear tests the whole land died out and turned into loose sand, where there is no drop of water. By the way, the state is called Nevada. No water. In Australia, there is even such a practice. When you go somewhere on foot far away, you need to leave a note in a notebook in an iron box about who you are, where you are going, and when you will be there.